everybody, I'm RitualNeo, and welcome to my panel on ARKit face tracking for VTubers. Yay! You guys have probably seen VR chat face tracking before, or maybe you have a favorite streamer who has more expression than some other people's VTubers, and I've come to kind of bring some awareness and show how all that stuff is done. So I've got a demo here. Oh, first, about me, I'm Ritual or Neo, and RitualNeo. Any variation of my name is okay, and my pronouns are him/they. I've been an avatar-focused content creator of over 3 years in VR chat. I got into VR because of Beat Saber, and I stayed because of VR chat. I have a degree, and sometimes I go to flight school because I'm an aspiring pilot. I've been messing around in 3D for not quite a year now, just doing what I can, you know, making all kinds of stuff. And I am both a Twitch and a YouTube partner, so I've got my hands in a little bit of everything. I have a demo for you guys to show off ARKit tracking in case you've never seen it before. Cueing the video. Okay, yeah. So this is a VTuber setup I made for Monty. It has 52 expressions. All of those expressions are controlled by blend shapes, except for the eye bones, which are obviously rigged eyes. And the whole thing is tracked with an iPhone that streams the data to VSEEFACE. So both sides of the face have independent tracking. ARKit doesn't track pupils, but you can fake pupil movements by basing them on one of the other expression triggers. Hands are tracked by a leap motion device. Yeah, and I have more examples later on. So what exactly is ARKit? ARKit is Apple's augmented reality platform, so it can be used for a variety of things, like, well, augmented reality, for example, so like putting things in video and making them look like they exist in real life, or scanning rooms and objects into 3D, but it can also use the front-facing camera to basically see your face. And VTubers can take advantage of that by streaming the captured data to their VTuber software. Pretty much any iOS device that has Face ID can use ARKit, and some other devices can as well, but the main ones are pretty much the iPhone X and up. There's a difference in how well it functions, because like the X has Face ID, but it got a lot better after the XS and the XR. So, for example, I mainly use an iPhone 12 and an iPhone 14 to get face tracking, but a lot of my friends have used like an XR or a 13, or some of them even use iPad Pros. Basically, anything with Face ID can use ARKit pretty well. You also need a way to mount your phone. So I use a gooseneck to mount my phone over my monitor. And I also recommend, if you have a case on the phone, you should take it off, because the phone is very likely to overheat while using face tracking. It's very hardware intensive for a cell phone. And also just plug it in. Android devices also can run. They can do a little bit of the face tracking, but it isn't as good because they don't have the depth sensing IR camera that is on iPhone. They do have their own API called AR Core, but it's a little different. So what kinds of software do you need? There are 3 apps on iPhone, and you only need one, and I'm going to give you a quick rundown of each one. Face Motion 3D is what I use, and it comes with a Blender plugin that lets me test face tracking in Blender before I bring it in Unity. So So that's why I use that one the most. It also comes with a lot of settings that let you customize the tracking. iFacial mocap is made by the same people who made Face Motion 3D. It's a little simplified and it doesn't have as many features, but it's also a little cheaper. Most people could use any of these 3 apps and get pretty good results. VTubeStudio is free and you just pay for the features you want to use. But if you want to try ARKit tracking without spending money, I would suggest using VTubeStudio. If you are an Android user, you can get Meowface, and Meowface actually has like pretty regular development. If you want to try to get, that's right. If you want to try Meowface, you can get it on your iPhone, and the results with the tracking will be mixed because iPhones can be really, really different. By the way, I will be taking questions at the end. So if you are in the Discord server for Furality, there's going to be a channel in there, and you should just start putting your questions in there now so I can address them at the end. You will also need Unity to assemble your avatar and 3D editing software in case the model doesn't come with the blend shapes already. So you know that it takes 52 tracking points and a bunch of blend shapes, right? How do we actually get there? Well, first you need to have 52 blend shapes on your model. Most people's models are in FBX, right? And the names of these blend shapes are exact and case sensitive, and I will be linking a resource for that later on in a thread. Then they have to be made into blend shape clips in a VRM. So you need to download the VRM SDK and optionally a VSF SDK if you want to have some more features. Pretty much most humanoid models can be made into a VRM. So if your character works in VRChat, it can be made into a VRM with Unity. So what is the VRM format? It relies on Unity and the UniVRM SDK. I heavily recommend using UniVRM 0.99.2. There are newer versions of UniVRM, and you can choose to use those. But if you want to use the same version of Unity that you use for VRChat and be able to bring the SDK in your projects, you want this version of UniVRM. It's also the recommended version for using VSEEFACE, VSEEFACE's SDK. Another cool fact about VRM is that because it's a pretty standard format, you can use the avatars in a lot of games as well, although that function is a little different than face tracking with VTubers. If you make a VRM avatar, there are going to be some limitations. You can only use VRM's Toon Shader or Standard Shader, for example, and they use spring bones instead of dynamic bones. But if you make it a VSF on top of being a VRM, then you can use whatever shader you want in addition to dynamic bones. The VSF format is like a format that goes over VRM, and it was made just for VSEEFACE, although some other apps accept it as well. You can give Unity animations to your avatars with VSF because normally an animation isn't really compatible with a VRM. And I have a video example of that after this slide. You can also use animations to make toggles without blend shapes. So if you ever had like a character who has, say you want to add glasses to your character really, really fast without making a new blend shape, you would just want to add it in Unity. It would be easier to do that with the VSF format. Otherwise, you'd have to go into 3D and make a new blend shape to hide your new accessory. Whereas in Unity, you could just record a really, really simple animation to toggle a new accessory, such as glasses. Remember that if you're using the VSF SDK, the way you export the avatar is a little different than exporting a VRM. This is a common mistake a lot of people arrive in my DMs about, is they'll get an avatar package and they'll try to export it and they export the VRM instead. I have a second demo that shows off specifically a use case for Unity animations. So if you look at this character, the ears move a lot, and the ears are actually a animation using the bones and the armature instead of blend shapes. So you would need the VSF format to do that. In this example, they're tied to eyebrows and eye movements that go left and right. So yeah, one of the main ways I use Unity animations with characters is to make their ears move, or if the character has like antennae. You can also make animation blend trees to forge corrective blend shapes. So, for example, if you have a wink, or like your character is closing their eyes, but they're also angry or they're also squinting, you can make a corrective morph that triggers when the character is both angry and closing their eyes, or both squinting and closing their eyes, that causes the blink not to clip through the model. You could also make it so that your character emotes or has a special effect. So like, for example, if you are frowning to a certain value with both the left and right side of your mouth, you could make a fuming animation appear. There's a lot of potential with tying the face tracking triggers to custom animations. So what if you want to do this yourself, right? You want to go into Blender and you want to make 52 shape keys so that you can assign them to blend shape clips in Unity and have your own face tracking on your own favorite character, right? The most important thing that you need to get right away is that the names do matter. So you have to make the name exact in Blender, or else you'll spend more time fixing it later in Unity. And then the names of the blend shape clips are exact. I would even go as far as to say in some tools and applications, they are case sensitive. I have a reference here that people can use. Obviously, you can't click on it because it's a presentation, but I'll be linking that in a thread later. And I use the exact names from ARKit-face-blendshapes.com. Those exact names, and it saves me a ton of time with setup because I have tools that help me plug things in automatically. Another thing that is really helpful if you want to make these blend shapes yourself, there are 52 of them, which is a lot, but half of them are a reflection of the other ones. So you've got like left smile, left frown, right frown, blink, squint, etc. Many of those shapes are a left version and a right version. You can use a plugin. I use Shape Key Manager Pro to reflect those blend shapes, and it saves me a ton of time. Another thing that's important if you're going to sculpt and edit the blend shapes yourself is to understand some of the tools. So one of the biggest things I use, I switch between sculpting and editing mode, and I will use editing mode to hide things that I don't want to move. So for example, a lot of the times teeth aren't really supposed to move, or I want to hide the eyes while I'm working on the cheeks. You can also mask them in sculpting mode, but I find that hiding them in edit mode is more consistent. If you hide the eyes, you can use proportional editing to basically move the cheeks in a lot of different ways for your different face expressions. The other thing I recommend turning on is if you're in edit mode, there is a shape key edit mode button here that I've circled in red. It's kind of easy to miss if you haven't had a lot of time in Blender, but this will allow you to turn on shape keys while editing other shape keys and making sure they look okay together, because many blend shapes are going to be driving at the same time when you were doing face tracking. Save often and stagger your save files. What I mean by that is like every time you whenever you edit a model, it's possible to make a mistake that kind of scuffs the rest of the model. You don't even realize you did it until like an hour later. So I stagger my saves like every like half hour to an hour, I make like a version. That way, if something is broken, I have a lot to go back to, and that has saved me a lot of time, especially when you're newer and you don't really understand how the ways you're moving the mesh can break other things. It's good to have lots of different versions. And I mentioned it before, but Face Motion 3D has an excellent plugin that lets you test the face tracking in Blender, which is awesome because making a VRM is a time-intensive process, especially if your avatar is really, really big, like in accessories or just in data or textures. Making a VRM takes several steps, so it's nice to be able to test the face tracking in Blender itself, and it also makes it cool to show off your work before it's even done. Unity, everyone's favorite part. We all love Unity, right? I'll admit that I love Blender and I tolerate Unity. So making a VRM from your FBX involves a few steps. I have a tutorial video on this. If anyone is curious, I can send it to them. But basically, you import the FBX and the VRM SDK, and you T-pose the model. Then you export a VRM into the project, and then you work on that exported VRM and give it everything that it needs. I highly recommend having tools for this. So Pumpkin's avatar tools will allow you to transfer dynamic bones between different versions of your character, for example. Tracer755 made a tool that makes it really, really fast and easy to get your basic blend shape clips running on the avatar. Highly recommend that. People frequently run into errors when they make a VRM for the first time, especially if they're coming from VRChat. A really common error is if you left Fizzbones or any other VRChat specific component on the character, that will cause the character not to export with a pretty mysterious error message. Double and triple check the components on all of your avatars if you're having export problems. So what about VRChat, right? You guys obviously have seen VRChat face tracking. How is ARKit different? ARKit has 52 blend shapes, while SRanipal has 55. ARKit tracks eyebrows, while SRanipal doesn't really track your eyebrows. So there are a lot of similarities and differences. If you have an ARKit character or an SRanipal character, with work, you can transfer or change or modify or add to the blend shapes to make it compatible with the other API and vice versa. So there have been a few times, for example, where I've had a character that I made ARKit shapes for, and I spent like another hour just adding the shapes that are missing from SRanipal and then kind of transferring the repeat shapes. And that way, you can use it with a VRChat face tracking template. Some things I like about ARKit better are mainly this how it tracks the whole face with one device, whereas with SRanipal you need both eye and lip tracking separately. But if you want to use ARKit in VRChat, there are templates in the VRChat face tracking Discord. And there are also, it's also just a good place to get information, like if you want to do more face tracking stuff. One of the biggest difference between SRanipal and ARKit is that with ARKit you can stick your tongue out, but SRanipal has tongue morphs, so you can actually stick your tongue out and move it around. Have to demo this. Sorry, it's too much fun. So you can either use a template or you can manually input the blend shapes into parameters or into blend shape clips. So parameters for VRChat or blend shape clips for VRM. Or you can just change the names of the blend shapes and make them work that way. Yeah. I'll show it off one more time. I have VR chat face tracking with SRanipal, which is, like I said, a little different. It's pretty cool, but it is a little different than ARKit. I just want to give a couple shout outs to people I've poked their brains over the last year or so. Kate is a fantastic furry avatar maker. Rito Bandito is an awesome 3D artist and an animator. I've poked both of them about VRM stuff extensively and a little bit about face tracking. DeBaseman has helped me many times to get specifically VR chat stuff working. He's pretty brilliant at Unity. Nicarita I've poked many times about just doing blend shapes in Blender, so I want to thank him for that. Ishke has super in-depth knowledge of Blender. And Natch and Jin inspired me to get into Blender myself and get my hands dirty. So I just wanted to thank all those people for getting me into this stuff. I think I have time for the video, and then after the video, I want to take questions. Or, yeah, can we do the video? Okay, the video is queuing. So I have one more demo here. This is just more examples. So this one, the ears are actually blend shapes, not bones, like I described with the Unity animations, which I thought was interesting because you can move them in certain ways, but I learned that moving ears with blend shapes, because the vertices only go from point A to point B without a morph, sometimes it looks better to do with the armature instead. This one is with Unity animations, so the ears are controlled by Unity animations, and the face is blend shapes, and the hands is the leap motion device. This is an example of a character that I converted from SRanipal to ARKit. The model was made by Nicarita. That was an interesting learning experience. This is an example of a character I did for an Android user. Donuts uses Android. So they track with Meow Face. And obviously the tail. Can't have donuts without the tail. This is one of the first ones I ever did, but I spent a lot of time on the ears on this one. This one was another one that had face tracking for Neos VR, and I converted it to ARKit just for fun. It also has a button I can press to make the whole face wobbly. That's a Unity animation toggle, so you would need to make it a VSF in order to do that. You can't do that with just a VRM. This is an early one I did for Staccato. Kissy face. And this is face tracking I did for the airplane dragon. This one was really, really fun to do because it has a really big expressive face and disc pupils. That's pretty much it. I'm going to open the floor for questions now. Let me browse the questions. Oh, they're preparing the Q&A. But yeah, face tracking is kind of my passion right now. I think it brings a whole new dimension to avatars, and especially VTubing and Twitch, or some people, they even use face tracking on in their long form content or their short form content. Like, for example, when I did Dano's face tracking, he made a massive amount of TikToks with it, and every time I see one, it just makes me a little happy because I'm like, yeah, I did the face.
Are you about ready for some questions?
Yeah, I'm ready.
A reminder that questions are open and available on the Furality Discord under the VR face tracking Q&A. You can post your questions there now. I have one here from Naka saying, what are some small details and tips that you can use to add onto the quality of the tracking and the blend shapes?
Okay, so with blend shapes specifically, remember, I mean, obviously it's kind of up to artistic interpretation and different characters will be different, but as a general guideline, most people have soft tissue in the face, and whenever you move a part of the face, that's an opportunity to move all of the face. So like when you smile, it pulls up some of your lower mouth a little bit. There could be a little crease under your eye, for example. So don't be afraid to just experiment with using the elastic tool in Blender, for example, and just move a lot of it around. And as you experiment, you can mask off certain areas of the face or use edit mode to hide things to give yourself an excuse to move more of the soft tissue with each expression. And now as for the tracking, each of the apps has a streaming mode that helps prevent the phone from overheating. I recommend finding that in each of the iOS apps. And also some moderate soft lighting will make your tracking a little more consistent. The iPhone is pretty good at low light, but you should give yourself a little bit of a ring light or a soft white light near your face but don't make it cast hard shadows. It's important, like just a soft, basic amount of lighting can make a big difference in tracking for some people. Is there another question?
Sorry, we're just getting rained on here.
No, baby. Rained on with questions, right?
We have one from Fiendish Name. What other plugins for face tracking and otherwise would you suggest for a new avatar creator?
If you are making avatars from scratch, or I guess I'm going to assume either from scratch or just for you're just editing face tracking onto models, the main plugins I use are Face Motion 3D's Blender plugin and Shape Key Manager Pro. Both of those are huge. For Unity, Tracer 755 has an auto blend shape clip tool that will save you a massive amount of time if you make VRMs often. And if you use dynamic bones often, or especially if you're converting VRChat characters to VRM, you will need a Fizzbone to dynamic bone tool, and then you can use Pumpkin's tools to copy dynamic bones across avatar versions quickly if you're making a lot of VRMs. So when I make a VRM, there's usually 1 to 7 versions, and it saves me a ton of time to be able to copy components. So those are some good plugins.
We have another one here from Red Speeds saying, are there any ways to face track using Android?
Yes. If you want to face track with Android, your results will be a little mixed because Android devices vary, but it needs to be running at least 5.0. And the app that you want is called MeowFace on Android. And that can stream capture data to VSEEFACE, very similar to Face Motion 3D. But your results may not be as good as, say, doing it with an iPhone 12. So yeah, MeowFace is the keyword you're looking for.
Another question from Divide by Zero. Are there any good places to seek out artists to commission to add face tracking to their models?
Yeah. it's kind of adjacent to VRChat face tracking, so I think a lot of people in there take commissions for this. I also take commissions for it, but I don't want to toot my horn too much on here. Anybody who makes 3D models for VRChat can probably do it as well. So if you see somebody who opens their commissions for avatar edits, especially like mesh edits, they can probably make face tracking blend shapes for you, especially if they are familiar with VTuber software.
We have one more here. We have one from Tech Youngkey. I apologize for butchering that name. But for VTubestudio, how does one get good tracking with glasses, especially with glare from a light source?
Okay, so I wear both glasses and contacts depending on the day. Personally, I find that the iPhone does a pretty good job of getting my face most of the time with glasses. If you have a glare problem, try shining the light on a white surface. So have the light face away from you and the white surface face towards you. That way it'll be more of a soft light and less intensive right on your glasses and on your face. If your glasses are still a problem, you can try getting less intensive frames. So if you have like really, really big blocky frames, you can try getting some glasses with like really thin frames. But most of the time when I wear glasses, the tracking is pretty good. I have to push the glasses up so that it doesn't slide down my face and block my pupils. And sometimes it gets a little confused about my eyebrows. But if you go into VSEEFACE, you can smooth it out so it's less obvious. I think that's the best you can do.
Question from Phantom. Have you made any tutorials, and where could you find it, if so?
Okay. I have not made a tutorial specifically about ARKit, but I have made a VRM conversion tutorial. I'll be linking it in the Discord later, and I've also linked it on a thread that I recently posted on Twitter.
Looking for the next question. What is the most difficult problem you've had with one of your projects? That comes from Asmodesian.
Okay, if it's regarding face tracking specifically, the hardest blend shape to make is mouth closed. So there is, in SRanipal, this is called ape shape, and it's one blend shape, but in ARKit, it's two blend shapes, and it's jaw open combined with mouth closed. If you are not careful about the insides of the mouth, so like for example, characters often have a mouth bag, teeth, gums, and a tongue. If you don't edit this shape carefully, a lot of that stuff can clip through the bottom of the mouth when you're making this shape. And the shape looks very strange by itself. So you have to learn how to edit a shape key while another shape key is on. That is probably the most challenging face tracking shape to make. But in regards to the whole process, if an avatar has a massive amount of assets, like say clothing, materials, animations, and toggles, it becomes extremely tedious to make test version VRMs in Unity, and that becomes really time consuming really fast. So I really prefer to work on avatars that don't have a lot of assets going on. Hopefully that answers the question.
And a question that I will answer is multiple people have asked if this is going to be recorded and posted anywhere. Yes, it will be recorded and posted onto the Furality YouTube channel. Here's a good question from Alvrian. I keep butchering names, I apologize. Are there any major differences when using an iPad instead of an iPhone when it comes to face tracking? Or is it generally
that's
just the same?
That's a good question. That's a good question because I wanted to cover that, and I think I kind of pandered over it. So the iPad Pros do have an increased field of view, and obviously because it's a bigger device, it's less susceptible to overheating. The difference is not going to be mind-blowing. You're not going to be... It's not going to rock your world, but if you're an enthusiast, you might notice that it is better in some ways. The actual tracking won't be marvelously better, but the iPad might be a more convenient device for some people. Depending on the iPad, because there's different ones, but from my understanding, the front-facing camera has a higher field of view.
Our next question from Adam Axo. Can you use Maya aside from Blender/Unity to set up facial tracking?
Yes, you can. You can use any 3D editing software that you love to do, and in fact, a lot of the original documentation is for Maya, and even I have a face tracking book, and it's Maya focused, so Maya is an excellent program. Blender is just what I'm good at because I'm stupid. I use Blender because I need it. I'm carried by Blender. But if you are excellent at Maya, then just by all means, you know. My only thing about that is like make sure you have the blend shape names exactly like in the documentation. Exactly. Otherwise, you're going to run into some snags later down the line.
We have one from the Third Sphinx 4695. Is it possible to have ARKit with an Oculus setup?
Like, you mean like with Quest Pro face tracking? I'm guessing that's what they mean. I'm having to make it a little bit of an assumption there. There are templates for face tracking in the VR chat face tracking Discord, and one of the ones they talk about is the unified expression template, I think. That might do what you want. If you have like ARKit blend shapes and Oculus face tracking, you might be able to use one of those templates. I would probably ask about your use case specifically in that server. Hopefully that answers that one. That's kind of on the fringe of my knowledge.
Looking here. And we'll do one more question here.
Okay.
If I can just find one. There was a good one I just missed. Where is it?
And I might spend some time in the server after the panel is over answering more questions. Because if everyone didn't get their question answered, I'd be really sad.
I have a question here from Manu8, and they are asking, what is the best setup hardware-wise for eye and face tracking when using the Quest 2/Pico 4? Is that even achievable?
You know, I've never had an Oculus device, so that's kind of on the fringe of my knowledge. My focus is kind of on basically mobile device face tracking, and I happen to use the Vive Pro Eye as well. The Oculus is a little outside of what I know. I see Oatnom has asked, is there an optimal placement for the iPhone camera? I can answer that one really quick. I use a gooseneck over my computer monitor, and I actually flip the iPhone so it's landscape oriented, and I have the front-facing camera near the middle of the top of my monitor. That's how I do it. It's not going to make a dramatic difference because the front-facing camera is pretty good, just as long as it's facing you and can see all of your face if you like look around. Some people use a camera or an iPhone holder below the monitor I prefer having it over my monitor. If you turn it landscape, it can be a little closer to the top of the monitor instead of peeking over it too much, and it's easier for me to interact with. The only thing I will say about that is that if you use Face Motion 3D, you should start the app already holding your phone in a landscape orientation. Otherwise, it'll get your heads left and right wrong. So you'll when you look left, it'll look up instead. So make sure you have it oriented the way you plan on using it before you launch the app. Do you have any other ones?
Sure, I got one. This one's from Itmo, and they ask, do you have any information on the difference between VRC-FT and VRC-OSC for face tracking controlling?
That's a little outside of like VSEEFACE and ARKit stuff. I'd ask about that in the VRC face tracking Discord. I only know enough OSC to get the Vive Pro Eye working. It comes with a program that does most of the OSC stuff for you.
Let's see. I think we've pretty much touched on most of the questions here. And then Spar Chanston says, or asked, if there are custom lenses that can be made for headsets for glasses and how those work with face tracking.
I had custom lenses for my index a really long time ago, but I switched to using contacts. I forget the exact brand name because it's been a while since I used them, but I know they exist. I think the way that I got them, you could use the lens goes, the prescription lens goes over the VR lens, and it's just a little insert. I think that would still allow room for eye tracking, I think, because of where the little camera is. But I would ask somebody who actually uses that right now, because when I had it, it was with index, and the index doesn't have eye tracking. So my answer to that would be, I think you could use a corrective lens because it doesn't go over the infrared sensor, but it probably depends on the headset. I see Carnith is asking, does facial hair negatively affect face tracking with ARKit? My answer to that is most of the time, probably not. As long as your face has relatively good lighting, because Face ID is based on like your phone recognizing your face. So if it's iPhone, it's probably going to be fine. Up to a point, like obviously if you go really, really crazy, you might lose some articulation.
I believe that is all the time we have for questions at the moment. Thank you everyone who submitted any questions in the Discord. And if you have any more questions, I'm sure they would be more than happy to answer those after the panel. If you would like to do your...
Thank you so much for having me. I hope you all have a wonderful day.